Senator Sherrod Brown was here in Toledo, ignoring my calls, by the way. I did reach out to see if he wanted to come on the show. He was speaking to the UAW. We'll talk about that and more with Republican Senate candidate for our great state of Ohio, Bernie Moreno, who is joining me now. Bernie, always great to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Scott. It's totally in keeping that Sherrod Brown would dodge you, because heaven forbid somebody ask him a tough question like, why did you vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, which basically decapitates the U.S. auto industry, hands it to China, will lead to the closure of more auto plants. And, of course, what he's doing instead is just making a total political appearance in Toledo, make it look like to the people of Toledo that he actually cares. He does not, but at least he's out of his basement and is getting around to Ohio, which is something he only does once every 6 years.
Yeah, it was kind of ironic because he called on the Biden administration to take, quote, immediate steps to prevent China from undermining U.S. manufacturing. Oddly, he has voted to undermine U.S. manufacturing consistently in a 100% record with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Well, it's amazing because I think he may have forgotten that he's actually a United States senator. He may have forgotten that he's actually capable of introducing legislation to do exactly what you just discussed. But the reality is, look, it's all political gamemanship. He votes with Biden and Harris almost 100% of the time, but now he's in Ohio trying to fool voters into thinking he's something he's not. He's Gavin Newsom with a terrible haircut and none of the charm.
Here in Northwest Ohio, I'm using that line at some point. In Northwest Ohio right now, in the Toledo area, I mean, we're dealing with, I think it's almost a 4-week shutdown of both Jeep plants. Stellantis shutting down and what they said would be a 1-week retooling, and it's been almost a full month. People here are starting to suffer, and obviously the supply chain is about to be backed up as well. Probably going to have a hard time getting parts and new vehicles and inventory in, not to mention, bananas at some point very soon as the longshoreman strike continues. But the Jeep plant is shut down. That's a big deal. That's affecting thousands of families here.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine the stress as we go into holiday season shortly, and you work there, you worked your whole life, you follow the rules, you do a good job. And because of policies from, idiotic leaders like Sherrod Brown and Kamala Harris, your entire livelihood could be in jeopardy. And look, the reason is very simple. This Inflation Reduction Act, totally misnamed bill, gave hundreds of billions of dollars to incentivize people to buy electric cars that are predominantly made in China. And they incentivize the purchase of used vehicles. So what happens, they have these used that are competing with Tesla, but they don't have the $4,000 incentive for the used Jeep because it's an electric car. It's not the kind of car, that Sherrod Brown thinks that you should drive. So it's causing incredible disruptions in the car market. You know who knows this intuitively is that person who works at the UAW plant in Toledo, Ohio. They know that every single vote that Sherrod Brown has taken is undermining their job. What's a shame is that the corrupt union leadership doesn't support its members and instead backs corrupt politicians like Sherrod Brown. Look, we got to get rid of this guy. We're going to get rid of this guy. We're going to put President Trump back in the White House. We're going to restore American manufacturing, especially in the auto sector. We already gave a third of our industry away to Mexico and China. Put that back, and we're going to absolutely dominate the industry. Toledo's going to thrive. You're going to be able to go to school, graduate from high school, get a job, and life, afford a home, afford a car, and be able to retire debt-free, because that's the American dream.
We're talking to Republican Senate candidate Bernie Moreno here on the Scott Sands Show, BernieMoreno.com. Sherrod Brown, and this is a quote reading from his press release here. Few understand better than Ohio workers what bad trade policy does to our workers, our industries, and our communities. We cannot allow China to undermine American manufacturers by sending cars into the U.S. through Mexico. He says, I will keep pushing the administration to take action now to stop China's cheating and protect Ohio auto workers. Ironically, I mean, you alluded to electric vehicles. The very green policy and electric vehicle mandates that Sherrod Brown has supported is affecting the U.S. automotive industry. And even if you get a car made in the U.S. that happens to be an electric vehicle, which is fine. You want an EV, that's on you. We shouldn't be mandating it. But those rare earth minerals are coming from China. We're emboldening our enemy by mandating electric vehicles.
No, you said it exactly perfectly, Scott. I mean, we are absolutely the dominant player in internal combustion engines. We're ceding that dominant position, handing the industry over to China, and Sherrod Brown does a fake press conference pretending he cares. Look, he's been in Washington, D.C. for 30 years, Scott, for 30 years. During that period of time, we've lost over 200,000 manufacturing jobs in Ohio. This guy's the grim reaper of manufacturing in Ohio. If he shows up at a plant, it's probably because it's closing. Look, the reality is we have to reverse course. In the private sector, Scott, if you failed at that spectacular level, you would have been fired a long time ago, let alone be given 6 more years. Look, I'm not going to let Sherrod Brown get away from his own record. We're going to win this election because we're going to highlight what he's done to destroy manufacturing, to make it harder for the working class, make it harder on seniors. This guy cares more about foreign nationals and foreign countries than he cares about American citizens. We're going to reverse course on all of that.
We're talking to Bernie Moreno on the Scott Sancho, BernieMoreno.com. And Bernie, you've got, a little experience in the automotive industry. What's about to happen here? We've got interest rates that are going down just a little bit. At the same time, it may be harder to find the inventory of vehicles or to get parts to fix a used car. Are we going to see auto prices going back through the roof here in 30 days?
Yeah, the prices of everything, because what you have is the lack of leadership among Joe Biden's at the beach. Kamala Harris is hanging out with her Hollywood celebrities campaigning, and nobody's running this country. I mean, if President Trump were in the White House, this would never have happened. He would ensure that there was a deal that was made between the longshoremen and management to make sure that we continue to hum. We got to be making certain that things work better, that there's more productivity in this country. You don't even hear the media talking about it because, of course, it's a total lack of leadership among these lunatic Democrats. And the country deserves better than leaders like that.
Should the president step in and force the longshoremen back to work?
Who's the president? The guy that's asleep in the beach in Delaware?
It's a good life if you can get it.
The person that's campaigning in 33 days. You imagine you make $400,000 a year, and you can spend half of your time in office asleep in the beach in Delaware while
that's a good
America's
life, man.
hurting. Yeah, it's a great life. America's hurting. You got hurricane disasters in North Carolina. You got flooding disasters in Southern Ohio. You got a war in the Middle East. You got a war in Eastern Europe because of your weakness. You got the Asia Pacific region, a mess, and a completely wide open border. Well, you know what? Our commander-in-chief is asleep at the beach, and the other one doesn't even know what day it is. She's campaigning, pretending that she's something she's not. Look, this is a crisis in leadership. It gets fixed in 33 days, Scott. Monday's the last day to vote, register to vote. Make sure your listeners do that, and you can start voting on October 8th. Vote early and vote like your country depends on it, because it does.
I'm going to hold you to answering the question, though, Bernie. Should the president, whomever is occupying the Oval Office, step in to avert such a massive strike like the longshoremen that will affect supply chain issues, logistics, goods, exports? Should that be the responsibility of the president to say, nope, you're not going to be able to go on strike?
It should never have happened. He should have had leadership to go in there to preempt it. We need political leaders that prevent problems, not reactionary leadership. I learned that. That's how I built my business. And that's what President Trump would have done. Look, what did we have during 4 years? No strikes, peace around the world, no wars, ended wars because of President Trump's strong leadership. That's what's missing. Joe Biden is just an abject disaster, and Kamala Harris would be even worse. And by the way, our Senator Sherrod Brown votes with them, sides with them, and endorses them 100%.
Earlier this week, the vice presidential debate took place. Our friend J.D. Vance, I think, exceeded expectations even from people who thought he was going to do a great job. Your thoughts on the debate from Tuesday night?
Look, I mean, J.D. Vance showed who he is. He's an incredibly intelligent, incredibly articulate, incredibly knowledgeable person that also, most importantly, happens to be a really great human being. I've said that from the beginning. Picking J.D. Vance was a brilliant move by President Trump. It shows the judgment of the president, right? So you have the judgment of President Trump picking J.D. Vance. You have the judgment of Kamala Harris picking Tim Walz. Just that one decision should lead you to know who you should vote for. Kamala Harris is going to make a terrible decision, and who her cabinet's going to be, who judges are, the way she organizes the country, the way she negotiates with other. And he made a brilliant pick with J.D. Vance.
Who had a worse week, Kevin Stefanski or Tim Walz?
Oh, Tim Walz had a terrible week. I mean, look, the reality is you got to kind of feel sorry for the guy a little bit. This guy's got to defend the indefensible. He's got to go out there and say, hey, listen, I know you go to the grocery store and prices are up 20, 30%. I know you can't afford a house now. You can't afford a car now. You can't afford even to put gas if you do own a car. But, give us 4 more years and we'll fix it. He's got a terrible job. That's the worst sales job on earth. It reminds me of back in the 80s, the sales guys who had to sell Yugos. I mean, that was a tough job. The reality is J.D. Vance has a much easier job, which is, look, we had everything that we wanted in the country when President Trump was in office. We had middle class wages that were rising. We had peace. We had a secure border. We were energy independent. We had safety and security in our cities. It's a much easier sales job. Tim Walz has a tough one, and all he can do is just lie about it, lie and pretend the last 4 years didn't happen.
Guardians and Tigers kick off on Saturday. How do you think the Guardians are going to do?
I think the Indians are going to do really well. They could go all the way this year. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Bernie Moreno, BernieMoreno.com. We'll see you soon.
All right, Scott. Thank you so much.